It's very true. It's very true. But the real question is, do you believe it, and is there another way to make money? Okay, so as we talked to, we'll touch on some of these things. Silos, efficiency, agility versus KPIs. This one drives me nuts. Right, so you have agility. We live in a world of agility. You need to be adaptive. You need to move quickly. You need to work in teams. You need to do this, and then we need KPIs, and we need to follow a process. So how the hell can you be agile when you're following a distinct KPI, right? So where's the balance between agility and KPIs? Because we live in a world of matrix organizations and balanced scorecards, and we live in a world of setting goals and KPIs. And then you turn up to your monthly boss's report or your 3-quarterly report, and you say, "Have you hit your KPIs?" "No." Smack. "Okay, get out the door and come back again when you have." Right? That's the way the world works. So, okay, come on, let's go. I don't like big corporations, and I gave up working for them for a long time ago. Okay, it's much more fun in startup and SME world, by the way. But anyway, it's much more flexible. But I didn't hear a lot about culture carriers. I didn't hear a lot about information flow in organizations, and I didn't hear a lot about purpose. And we were talking about people and transformation, and these are the things which drive transformation. I would consider, it's a pity Robert left, because I would have said he is a typical culture carrier. He showed the graph, or the chart, of the, what did he have? He had data, processes, people. What was the third one he had? Tools, right? So we had tools, and Robert was sitting squarely in the middle, in here, cutting across all these silos, if you want to call each of those kind of silos, if you wish, or information silos. And he sits in the middle, and his role primarily is one of motivation and to glue the organization together, right? That's what he does. He carries information. He ensures that there's an information flow in the organization. And the reason you have silos in your organization is because you don't have good information flow. That's the only reason. You call them silos because that's what we've traditionally called them. They're departments, but they become silos when they get cut off from information and they live in an echo chamber. So finance becomes its own backslapping environment where you say, yeah, we're right, don't mind the operations guys, they're wrong. And the operations guys are over here going, we're right, forget about the finance guys, they're wrong. And the finance and operations guys never go for a pizza together and go, hey, well, what if we're both wrong? Or what if we're both right? Right? So the only reason you have silos is because you don't share information enough. So that's very important to think about these things when you think about organizational structure and cultures, and how do you get people. Do you have enough culture carriers and enough information flow in your organization?
We have lots of information flows, too much. Yeah. The point is that I think I can have access to all information, but it just doesn't, I don't care because it's not, because they don't have combined goals, right? So I can know everything what they're doing, they know everything what they're doing.
How do you know? How do you know about it? You know about it from a spreadsheet, or you know it through second information? You know the Trump impeachment is going on at the moment. It's fascinating watching the news and all. I hope the guy gets locked up and kicked into a prison and left there for 40 years in the dark and cold. Never mind my personal opinions about him. But but a lot of the impeachment case hinges around second-hand information. Are you talking to the source of the information?
There are several sources of information as well. That's another issue. So they are beating the drum from multiple angles.
Okay, so we've got this question when it comes to many things in life. Think about politics, think about capitalism, think about fake news, think about organization. What is the objective truth? Is there a single source of truth? You say there's multiple sources. Do they all align? Do they agree? Or do they have subjective opinions within that truth?
In our case, it's quite straightforward, and it's called my plan, and that's pretty much the annual plan, and our bonus is subjective.
But do you all agree with it?
There is a common language, but it doesn't, I don't know your principles and objectives, and we don't, I mean, we can share, but they are not realigned before they are kind of done.
Okay, so all we've touched on now, and there's no point in going really deep into the details because there's many issues in most companies, right? But all we've touched on now is a very clear example of two guys working in the same company that have similar goals to drive the organization, improve efficiency, increase profit, and they don't sit down and talk to each other enough about what their goals are. And we didn't have to come very far.
We said that several times, but we spent like 10 hours to go to this.
But I'm not blaming you.
I know.
I'm not blaming you. No, there's no blame. This is very synonymous of the majority of large organizations. You disappear into your echo chamber at 8 o'clock in the morning with your Starbucks coffee, and you exit your echo chamber at 5 o'clock, and if you're lucky, maybe you go play squash with someone, but all you talk about is squash, you don't talk about work, because you don't want to talk about work in your free time. But when do you actually sit down as human beings to say, hey, what are you up to? What do you think about this new plan? What do you think about the new CEO? Do you think we should say something to him? Do you think he's going in the right direction? Do I agree with his strategy? No, we don't do that. We don't challenge hierarchy, because that's, especially in this region, challenging hierarchy means either death or prison or, you know, like in the old days I'm thinking about, right? But we don't challenge hierarchy enough because we don't have the culture that accepts being challenged.
One of our values is courage to speak up.
Are you living up to your values? Truly? Or is it a poster on the wall?
Myself,
No, not you personally, the organization.
organization, to some extent is hypocrite, I think, because if something is a crap, we don't call it a crap, we call it as,
Could be improved.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So,
You know where I'm going with this, don't you?
Yeah.
We talk about this, you know, the Schuster sick boot. We're all hypocrites. The system is full of hypocrisy. Right? We know where the problems are. We generally have a good feeling of what's wrong with the organization. But we don't challenge the status quo because you're saving up for a new house, or you're just about to buy a car, you're just about to have a baby, and you're not going to rock the boat because then you'll have to go look for a job, and that would be a pain in the ass, and blah, 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 blah. And we're constrained within the system because money is king. We're constrained. So not only in a macro culture are we constrained, because not many people have the freedom to sort of say, I don't care if I'm unemployed for 6 months. Not many people have that freedom. Not many people would seek that freedom.
It's not about employment, or because I'm really local, so if I see something which I think it's a gap and should be solved, or I don't agree with something and I'm speaking up, it depends on whether they think this is really their priority or not, or whether they think, okay, yes, that's point of view, but we are still not at that stage where we can deal with that. or
Yes, but you're
do
lucky you can
something.
speak up, right? So at least they listen, hopefully.
Yeah,
And
they
it
do.
also depends on how you express your criticism, right? That's another aspect, the tone and the vocabulary of how you stand up and rebut. But what I guess what I'm trying to say is the most important thing is to what's the word? Cultivate a culture that really lives up to be brave, be honest, whatever it is on your values, and say, okay, I will accept that Theo has a different opinion. Let's discuss that opinion and let's see why she has that opinion, rather than be slapped back down or you live in fear for maybe losing your job or not getting the next project or not getting the next promotion. Okay, so if you really have that honest culture, it's very important. We'll come to a book later on, but data. We talked about data, or Robert talked about data, and he talked about the healthcare industry, and he also touched on the airline industry. And it just so happens that I have a reading recommendation for anybody who likes data and people and all that kind of stuff. It's called Black Box Thinking, and it's all built around. It starts off. I'll share a picture of it later on, but it's all talking about the airline industry and its healthy approach to failure, compared to the medical industry, which has a completely different approach to failure. Doctors hardly ever go to court for liability, and if they do, you never hear about it. In the airline industry, when there's an airline crash, there's a full investigation, the full case file is shared by every single commercial pilot globally, and every single commercial pilot has the opportunity to give their opinion as to why they think that failure occurred. So failure and the response to failure is built into the airline industry, which is why it's one of the safest ways to travel. We hear about big major crashes, but statistically airline travel is one of the safest ways to travel, because they have a healthy approach to failure. In comparison, the healthcare industry has horrible statistics about deaths in operations, about people dying on beds in hospitals, people catching diseases, all that kind of stuff. We just don't hear about it. Why? Hierarchy. Because doctors study for 6 or 7 years, and people look up to them like gods of society, right? You trust your doctor. You don't challenge your doctor. You trust your doctor. You don't even question it really most times. You go into the doctor says, you've got this problem, there's a tablet. Okay, boom, 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 out you go. How many people really go to a second or third or fourth doctor, or go to a holistic spiritualist or anything like that, or go to a herbal doctor and really examine their blood sugar levels and all this? The doctor will tell you to lose some weight, and you'll go online and you'll Google diets that I like the sound of, and you'll go on a diet, but really your diet is connected to your blood sugar. But do you go and you measure your blood sugar and find out what food is right for you? Probably not. Anyway, my point is you don't challenge hierarchies generally. Humans are not generally designed to challenge hierarchies. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but this is a kind of an overall context of why are we transforming? Where did this term come from, digital transformation? I mean, we've always been changing, we've always been moving with the times, but it is true that times have accelerated now. What do they call it? Moore's law and the microchip processing power and computers in our hands has really moved transformation into a super high speed scale. And these are some of the high level statistics around that we've got millennials. There's a cultural macro kind of thing. You've got different people socialized, growing up in a completely different environment. When I was growing up, I remember when I got my first telephone, my first mobile telephone, I was 16 or 17 years old. Gives you an indication of how old I am. But nowadays, 2-year-olds have mobile telephones and they're watching YouTube. And they're flicking through the things and they're learning how to type at 3 and 4 years old. How do they search for Ninjago or whatever it might be? Yesterday my son said to me, "Mommy, how do I spell Ninjago?" And he's 6! So they're being socialized in a completely different environment. And so millennials are a key drive to why we're talking about transformation. But generally, the vast majority of leaders say that the speed of digital transformation in their organizations is way too slow. The interesting statistic behind that number is that the vast majority of CEOs were not socialized at a time when you had mobile phones. They grew up when they were banging a wheel and a stick down the road for entertainment. They come from a completely different generation. So can they really connect to the millennials? Probably not, unless they're very lucky to have advisors from the younger generation talking to the CEOs, "Hey, you're missing the point." Do you know what I mean? This is transformation and really connecting them to the new cultures. But the vast majority of CEOs in these massive big companies, they're normally 50, 60 years old. They come from Harvard, they've had a massive career, but they didn't grow up in a time when there was computers and mobile phones. So there's a real disconnect between the speed of transformation. So I don't know, how old is your CEO?
We have a new one, just the Bob, more than a new one. Bob was an old one, retiring. We have a very new one. I think it's 40 something.
Okay.
50 bucks.
Oh, that's not too old, right? I won't comment on that kind of age, right? But 60 is kind of old, right? But even a CEO of about 50 would still be on the limit of whether or not he's able to stay in touch with the real technology. You know what I mean? How old is your CEO? Do you know who your CEO is?
Yes, of course.
Guess. Based on his photograph. Okay. So we talked a little bit about people. Okay, we've got it. Why do I have a?
I try to set it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Most of the slides should be within, and there's only a few words. So we talked about leaders, right? So the right type of leaders, right? We still have a tendency in HR, anybody that is part of the HR process, I'm sure you were involved in hiring your own people. We still have a tendency to ask people, give me an example of something you did in the past. But we don't say to people, here is a problem I have, help me solve it as part of the interview. We ask them, when did you do something similar in the past? Yeah, and they can make that up and they can maybe grade the truth a little bit. But they don't tend to turn around and say, hey, well, here is an actual problem that I have on my desk today as part of my 220 goals. How would you help me solve that problem? To really understand the critical thinking capabilities and the problem-solving capabilities of that person. So these are some of the small recommendations I'll give you as you go through, right? You can have the slides afterwards, of course. Why is that happening? It's not is it the size of the screen?
It's still the size of
Yeah, I think the PPT.
It's not a PPT, it's actually a PowerPoint, so it's not actually, I didn't convert it.
And if you make the PDF smaller.
It's not
Can
a
I
P- it's
try
not,
some?
yeah, you can try, it's not a PDF though, it's actually just a PowerPoint.
Maybe it's the output of the
Yeah, I thought it might be the
projector.
output of the projector, no?
Yeah, how the projector is taking the size of the PPT.
Or because I put it in small now because it's
Maybe I pressed something, did I? No. What have I done?
I turned it on and on. So maybe like this.
Yeah, well, if you can read that, let me know if you can't read that. So, what does this kind of show? I mean, I won't go into every detail on this, but this looks at, you know, CEOs. Can you sharpen this? There you go, that's better. So the CEO is leadership. Is obviously, we all know that support from the top and direction from the top is really important, but that goes without saying. But who are the other people that are driving digitalization and organizations' innovation efforts? Operations officers, information officers, finance officers, and last but not least, chief innovation officers. And then you look at the surveys, global surveys about, you know, where do people think they're going to be in terms of, you know, what are their competencies needed in the next 3 to 5 years for each of those types of roles, for each of those types of roles, and what are the competencies for each of those types of roles. And strategic vision comes up by far as the thing that they're going to need in the next 3 to 5 years. So what's going to create that strategic vision is behind all this. Continuous learning, we talked about collaboration, speed of execution, and clear communication. Nothing on that list talks about knowledge of technology. Everything on that list points to the ability to lead people and lead themselves. So this is, again, just to reinforce what Robert was saying, technology doesn't drive digital transformation. People and you drive digital transformation. Technology is a tool, and there's vast amounts of tools out there to choose from. Technology is just a tool to help you execute as an organization better, okay? And what do your employees want? How important is it